everyone, and welcome. So glad to have you with us today.
Glad to be here.
You ready for a deep dive?
Always.
Today, it's all about ecosystems. We've got some awesome research lined up, a whole chapter from a biology textbook.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is. So, picture your favorite spot in nature, right?
Okay, picture it.
That's an ecosystem.
Right.
Officially, it's, let me check my notes.
The living and non-living things interacting,
A
right?
community of living organisms,
Yeah.
along with the non-living components of their environment, interacting as a system.
Perfect.
So, yeah, basically what you said.
It's all connected.
It is all connected.
Yeah.
You get this. The whole planet, everywhere life exists,
Yeah.
that's one giant ecosystem too.
The biosphere.
The biosphere. Whoa. That's
That's a big deal.
a lot to take in. That's why we're,
Focusing on the smaller pieces.
exactly. So the textbook breaks it down.
Okay.
Terrestrial ecosystems like forests, grasslands, deserts.
Right.
Aquatic ecosystems.
Yeah.
Ponds, lakes, oceans.
Even a puddle can be an ecosystem.
Seriously.
Yeah, think about it.
I guess.
Yeah.
All those little microorganisms.
Exactly.
Even human-made environments.
How interesting.
Crop fields, aquariums.
Makes sense.
Those are ecosystems too.
Cool.
It's all about the interplay, the connections.
Absolutely.
Now, the textbook says there are 4 main things to look at when we study ecosystem.
Okay, let's hear them.
Productivity,
Uh-huh.
decomposition,
Right.
energy flow,
Important one.
and nutrient cycling.
Got it. So basically how an ecosystem functions.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts of it all.
If you understand those 4 things, you've got a pretty good grasp of how any ecosystem works.
So let's dive into one specific ecosystem, shall we?
Sounds good.
Imagine a pond.
Okay.
Peaceful, right?
Serene.
But underneath.
Bustling with activity.
Exactly. It's like a whole world in miniature.
A little microcosm.
So what makes up this pond ecosystem? Let's see. According to the textbook,
The abiotic factors first.
right, the non-living stuff,
Water, sunlight, temperature.
the soil at the bottom,
Yeah.
then the producers.
Yeah.
The plants, the algae, phytoplankton, that kind of thing.
Capturing the sun's energy.
Then you've got the consumers,
Yeah.
heterotrophs,
The zooplankton, insects, fish.
all the critters eating the plants and each other,
Right. And then the decomposers.
the fungi, the bacteria,
Cha.
breaking down the dead stuff.
Recyclers.
Yeah, it's like a perfect little circle of life.
Exactly, a perfect illustration of how an ecosystem works. Producers converting energy, consumers using that energy, decomposers breaking things down, nutrients cycling through the system. It's all there in that pond.
Okay, I think I'm getting this. So you've got all these different organisms, all these interactions.
Right, and it all comes back to energy.
The sun, right?
The sun is the ultimate power source for almost all ecosystems.
Except for like those crazy deep sea vent things.
Right, those are a whole other story. But for most of life on Earth, it starts with the sun.
So plants capture the sunlight, turn it into energy, and then
And then that energy gets passed on to other organisms through feeding relationship.
food chains.
Exactly. Remember that grass goat human example from earlier?
Yeah, classic.
That's a simple food chain showing how energy flows from one organism to the next.
So the grass is the producer, the goat is the
primary consumer because it eats the producer
and then humans,
through to secondary consumer.
because we're eating the goat, which ate the grass.
Precisely. Each step in that chain represents a trophic level.
Trophic level. Okay, so
Yeah.
like levels of eating.
Exactly. But it's rarely that simple in nature. Most ecosystems have complex food webs with organisms feeding at multiple trophic levels.
It's like a bear that eats berries and salmon. So it's a primary consumer and a secondary consumer.
Exactly. It gets pretty tangled. And here's the key thing about energy flow. It's not very efficient.
What do you mean?
Only about 10% of the energy from one trophic level gets passed on to the next.
Wait, seriously, what happens to the other 90%?
Most of it is lost as heat or used up in metabolic processes like respiration and movement.
Oh, so it's like energy gets burned up along the way.
You could say that.
So that's why you don't have like a million trophic levels.
Right. The energy just wouldn't support it. There's not enough left at the top.
Makes sense. So that's why those pop predators like sharks and lions, they're,
Relatively rare.
yeah, they need a ton of energy, but there's just not enough to go around. It's like a game of telephone. The message gets weaker and weaker with each pass.
Perfect analogy. That 10% rule has big implications for how ecosystems are structured.
Okay, so we've got the sun, the plants capturing energy, and then it flows through the food web.
And along the way, energy is lost as heat.
Right. But what about the stuff that dies? all those leaves and,
The dead animals.
yeah, where does that energy go?
That's where the decomposers come in.
The fungi and bacteria. Right.
Yeah. They play a crucial role in what's called the detritus food chain.
Detritus. Sounds kind of gross.
It basically means dead organic matter. So the detritus food chain starts with dead stuff like fallen leaves, wood, animal carcasses.
So it's like the leftovers of the ecosystem. But those leftovers are important.
Absolutely. Decomposers break down that dead material, releasing nutrients back into the soil. Those nutrients can then be taken up by plants, starting the cycle all over again.
It's like nature's ultimate recycling program.
Exactly. Without decomposers, nutrients would get locked up in dead matter and the whole system would grind to a halt.
Okay, so we've got these two main food chains happening.
The grazing food chain, starting with plants, and the detritus food chain, starting with dead matter.
And they're both interconnected, right?
Absolutely.
It's like this incredible web of relationships.
And all of this flow of energy and the cycling of matter, it can be represented visually using ecological pyramids.
Oh yeah, those triangle diagrams. But honestly, I never quite understood those.
They're basically a way to show the trophic structure of an ecosystem, how energy and biomass are distributed at different levels.
Okay, so like the bottom of the pyramid is the producers because there's the most of them.
Exactly. And then it gets narrower as you go up because there are fewer organisms at each trophic level.
So fewer herbivores than producers, fewer carnivores than herbivores.
Right. It's a way to visualize the flow of energy and the decreasing biomass at higher levels.
Makes sense. But wait, I thought the ocean was like super productive. So shouldn't the pyramid for the ocean be really wide at the bottom?
Well, there are actually different types of ecological pyramids.
Oh.
You've got pyramids of number, pyramids of biomass, and pyramids of energy, and they don't always have that classic pyramid shape.
Interesting. So what's the difference between them?
The pyramid of number just looks at the number of individuals at each trophic level.
Okay, straightforward enough.
The pyramid of biomass looks at the total mass of living organisms at each level.
Now the pyramid of energy.
That one shows the amount of energy stored at each trophic level.
Got it. So why wouldn't they always be pyramid-shaped?
Well, sometimes you get these inversions. Like think about a big oak tree.
Okay.
It's a single producer, right?
Yeah.
But it can support thousands of insects.
Whoa.
So in that case, the pyramid of numbers would be inverted. You'd have a narrow base representing the one tree, and then a much wider section above it representing all the insects.
That's weird.
Right. It's not always what you expect. And you can also have inverted biomass pyramids.
Really?
Like in the ocean. Phytoplankton, the tiny algae that form the base of the food web, they have a much lower biomass than the zooplankton that eat them.
But how is that possible? Shouldn't the producers always have the most biomass?
It's because phytoplankton reproduce so quickly. They have a really high turnover rate. So even though their total biomass at any given moment might be low, their productivity, their rate of producing new biomass is high enough to support a larger biomass of zooplankton.
Wow, so it's like the phytoplankton are constantly being eaten, but they're also constantly reproducing.
Exactly. So the pyramids of number and biomass can be a little tricky. But the pyramid of energy, that one is always upright.
Always.
Always.
Why is that?
Because remember that 10% rule?
Yeah.
Energy is always lost as heat as you move up trophic levels. So there's always less energy available at the higher levels.
Okay, that makes sense. So the pyramid of energy tells the true story of energy flow in an ecosystem.
Exactly.
So we've got energy flowing through, and then we've got all these nutrients cycling around.
That's another crucial piece of the puzzle.
I'm starting to see how everything is connected. It's like this giant interconnected system. But I have to ask, how are humans impacting all of this? I mean, we're part of these ecosystems, right?
We are.
So like, what are we doing to them?
Well, our impact is pretty significant.
Yeah, I think we can safely say that.
Okay, so give me some examples.
Deforestation.
Yeah, cutting down trees.
It's not just the trees, though. It's the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. The soil, the wildlife, the climate.
It's all connected.
And then there's overfishing.
Emptying the oceans.
Depleting fish populations faster than they can recover, disrupting the food webs.
And all the pollution.
Plastic waste, industrial runoff, agricultural chemicals,
Like organic.
poisoning the planet.
Yeah, kind of.
And speaking of agriculture,
That's a big one, right?
huge. The way we produce food has a massive impact on ecosystems.
Intensive farming, all those fertilizers and pesticides.
It can lead to soil degradation, water pollution, loss of biodiversity.
It's not very sustainable.
No, it's not. That's why there's this push towards
Sustainable agriculture.
exactly trying to find ways to produce food.
without destroying everything.
Without destroying everything, protecting the environment, conserving resources, supporting biodiversity.
So crop rotation, cover crops, less pesticides, that kind of thing.
Right. It's about finding a balance.
It's like we have to find a way to live with nature.
Not against it.
Yeah. Because we're not separate from it.
We're part of it.
This whole deep dive has been like
Lots of process.
kind of mind-blowing. I mean, it's amazing, but also
A little scary.
yeah, but also hopeful. Because if we know how these ecosystems work,
We can make better choices.
right. So what can we do?
I mean, there's so much. We can reduce our consumption,
Buy less stuff.
support sustainable businesses, make conscious choices about where our food comes from,
Eat local, organic,
reduce our waste, recycle, compost,
plant trees.
plant trees, absolutely, and educate ourselves. The more we understand about these ecosystems,
The better we can protect them.
exactly, it's not just about saving the planet, it's about,
Saving ourselves.
it's about our own survival.
Whoa, that's deep.
It is, but it's also empowering, I think. We have the knowledge, we have the tools, we just need to use them. So, listeners, as you go about your day, think about the ecosystems around you.
The parks, the forests, the oceans, even the little patch of weeds growing in the sidewalk crack.
It's all connected. And it all matters.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today.
It's been a great conversation.
It has. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ecosystems.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time. Until then, stay curious.